Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by contracts, Raymond. Big ass 5-year contracts. Of course, we are talking about John Lynch's brand new contract. But before we get started, before we get into all of that, Raymond, why don't you let them know where can they find us?
You can always find us on facebook.com/the GoldCast, and be sure to subscribe to us via Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, everywhere that podcasts exist under the same moniker. Spotify. The GoldCast is everywhere you can possibly think of that has podcasts. We are everywhere, including our entire 5 years worth of backlog library, even back in the Old Man Davis days. That all is there in existence if you wish to go back that far. And be sure to subscribe, like, and comment, because we like to hear from you, and we certainly want to get your take on the hottest news coming out of 49ers camp today. There's a couple of tidbits in addition to that, but of course the hottest news, of course, is the latest signing, which we are very excited about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, Raymond, if they want to talk to you directly, how do they get a hold of Raymond?
You can always find me on Twitter at Ray Solis and on Instagram at Ray Solis1, and you'll see those tags here in the playback feed. If you're listening, it's RAYSOLIS with the number 1 on it for Instagram and no 1 on the Twitter.
Boom. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at I am Rudy Third. I am Rudy 3RD. All right, Raymond, we're going to start off with talking a brief, quick discussion on these scrappy little Giants. Got a little moxie to them. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, their much publicized socially distanced celebration that happened at the end of the game. And then, of course, we're going with the big stuff, John Lynch's brand new contract. And it's structured in a way that some people have deemed slightly questionable, but we think we know why that's being structured that way. We're going to talk about it after the intro. But, of course, the greatest podcast intro in the game, GoldCast. Your professor of fanalism is here. The greatest fanalist in the game is here. Class is in session. Let's go.
This is the GoldCast.
Boom. Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom. All right, Raymond, we are back. Another huge episode is here. It's in the books. Let's talk about these Giants. Giants were down 3-6 as late as the 6th inning yesterday in their 3-game series against the Padres. This was game 2. They lost game 1. I kind of left them for dead. And then lo and behold, in late innings, they end up pulling a win out. Mike Yastrzemski with a huge walk-off run in the 9th. Let's talk a little bit about these Giants because there's a little bit of fight to them. What are you seeing here early on? I mean, listen, there is still, there's 50-plus games left. This team could literally just fall to the ground and burn in a fiery pit of death, and I am not at all closed off to this reality as being a possible, as one possible scenario. But Raymond, they're just showing a little moxie here that I think most people didn't expect them to have. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing a team that's young, although some of the players that are obviously, there's still a lot of older players there.
Pablo, Hunter Pence.
Right. Buster Posey opted out this season, but he's there. Brandon Belt just came back. Longoria just came back, so we've got some more power that's back into the lineup, some much needed power.
Crawford's still there.
Crawford is still there. I expect him to continue to play. But we've got some other faces there. Yastrzemski is there, on the younger side of things, who's definitely added a little bit of rejuvenation there to the team that needs it. And there's a lot of young guys that are coming up. Dubon is a name that we're going to see quite a bit this year. I know we have Donovan Solano, who was a big contributor in this game. That's who the background picture is of today for me. He actually broke the tie in the 8th inning with a 3-run shot into an emptyless bleachers section. I don't know who gets to keep that home run, although we know that there are some rules in place for the other home runs depending on where it lands, although the splash zone is still the splash zone. Someone was the same guy, I think, got both of his splash hits today. But a lot of times when I see young players coming up, even though this is kind of still a large part of this roster is still very old, the arms are younger and the bats are getting younger as we move along through the Gabe Kapler, Zaidi era. And a lot of times what I've seen us a lot in Oakland, because Oakland often doesn't have a choice because of their budget reasons or their lack of budget. They often have to keep cycling through their farm system. Is that younger players, because they're eager to get into the bigs, they often have a lot of that moxie, that eagerness and will to prove themselves and to do well, because if you do well, good things happen, not only within your level of play, but also on the money side of things, as we all know. But as a result, you see a lot of scrappiness from these types of players. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that. We certainly saw some of that last night, although and I think the majority of the scoring last night was all via the long ball, with the exception of, I think, their first run. But I thought it was great to see. Solano had a key hit that really helped without Solano's hit, you're not getting Yastrzemski's home run means nothing in that game. So I give a lot of credit to him for putting us in that position and for Yastrzemski to cap things off with a huge splash win in a series that really needed to see some life out of the Giants. I know we took 2 from the Dodgers, and that was great to see, but those are really by the hairs of their chinny chin chins. And just again, more scrappy, torturous baseball from the Giants, even though it was a come from behind win. It's a win nonetheless. But as much as I'd like to see more dominant performances out of this team, I think they're just too young and in a rebuilding phase that I'm not sure those moments, we haven't gotten to that phase of the process yet. But still nice to get a win under the belt, especially in such early part of the season, or I guess not so early, depending on, the scope of the games this year.
Well, and the Padres were sporting one of the best records in baseball right now, and that was huge too. So it's nice to see that they got a win, and we have another game coming up tonight. And let's hope the Giants can take the series from the Padres. It'd be wonderful. And again, seeing some fight. Looks like the team needs needs a game to really kind of get into rhythm with whoever they're playing right now. Speaks to the youth of this team, but we'll see. We shall see. Now, Raymond, let's move on, because this is the big one. My boy.
Oh, yeah. The most important.
How do I do this way? John Lynch, the man. I know I'm like reverse. It's all reversed.
Yeah. This
Lynch.
Guy right here. This
big guy right here, John Lynch. Huge 5-year contract, Ray. Big contract. We have been eagerly awaiting contracts this whole offseason. We saw Shanahan with the big contract. We then that was followed up with Raheem Mostert getting a restructuring to his contract. And now John Lynch has come down. Let's talk about this. It's a 5-year contract. Kyle Shanahan has a 6-year contract. Some people have read into that as a backdoor for John Lynch to leave. I'm not going to say who those people are, but Raymond.
God, they're stupid though. They're really stupid.
Ray, really stupid. Let's talk about what this actually most likely means.
It means Jed York has gone on record to say that he wants both of these guys, Shanahan and Lynch, locked up in this team for a long time. And this is just contract, number 2 within an early phase of this new era. And I think that speaks volumes to, the confidence that Jed York has in these two individuals. I think the confidence that the fans, we've seen the results, we've seen the progression. and it speaks for itself. Not all the picks were great, although they were great initially, and then some of the character flaws started to surface their ugly heads and kind of derailed some of the excitement for some of the early picks. But John Lynch has hit a lot of big home runs in a lot of these draft picks, and that's with people like Kyle Shanahan working in tandem together to help put this roster together. But the main reason that I think is likely as to why, and Matt Mayoko also believes this too, and Matt Mayoko is the most straightforward vanilla guy who has his ear to the ground closest to the 49ers more than anybody, more than any of the morons that are saying otherwise, that have these other theories that he will go nameless. But I'm sure as time goes on, we will eventually start to name him. But I think that the likely reason is because if John Lynch continues on this trajectory, because we know Kyle is going to be going to coach for a very long time, and John Lynch is his goal is to win a Super Bowl, and their goal together. They've not said it in this exact quote, but the goal is to build a dynasty and to win multiple Super Bowls. They want sustained success. So that's John Lynch's goal, and they've been sticking to that plan to a T this entire time. So, but again, to make a long story short, the real reason that I think he got 5 years and Kyle got 6, it has nothing to do with Kyle Shanahan, but it has more to do with John's future trajectory within the organization. And if he continues on that path, he's going to go up a level the same way that Brian Saban did after he started to win championships with the Giants. He moved up a level, and then his protege, his understudy, came up to the GM position. Didn't have the same success, but still contributed a lot to those championships regardless. Just didn't do so well once he was in the official GM role. But at the same time, what I'm alluding to here with the Niners, that person is Adam Peters, someone we've talked about a lot on this show, someone we really like him on the show. He's not talked about a lot.
Remember, we talked about it. We had a whole episode way back in the day. Adam Peters, it's one of our most famous episodes, one of our most watched episodes. Adam Peters is the secret weapon. The second we got him from Denver, he was the head of scouting in Denver. You saw Denver. And he was actually recently appointed to that position. He wasn't in that position for very long for Denver. But once he got that position, Denver went down, San Francisco went up.
And I think the idea is that if they win championships between now and when this new contract is up, even before then, the likelihood that he gets elevated to not just he's not going to get another contract. I mean, he is, but he's also going to get a title change with that next contract, assuming they continue to make, contend for a title and ultimately win one, hopefully more than one, is he's going to get bumped up a level. And then Adam Peters is going to then become the GM. And trust me, they want to keep Adam Peters. They've lost some coaches here, but they've kept a lot of this nucleus together. And that's very rare and difficult to do in the NFL, especially when you haven't won yet. So obviously they're getting close, and they got as close as you can possibly get without winning last season.
7 minutes away, basically.
Exactly. So the idea is you want to keep as many of these cogs together, especially the Adam Peters cog, because that's a key cog in the draft process that's gotten the roster to where it's at now, which a lot of that is on the he is involved on the draft side. He's also involved on the free agency side. Remember, Kyle Shanahan's too busy coaching, drawing up plays, scheming his best players into success, that he doesn't have enough time to be scouting other players, but he knows what his needs and wants are with the team. And that's why you have people like John Lynch and his entire draft and his personnel staff to work on these things, is to get the right personnel in there, to get the right pieces in there. They've had a lot of home runs on the free agency market. Not all of them, but a lot of them have been great. Kyle Juszczyk probably is my favorite of the free agent acquisitions. I know Jerick McKinnon has been kind of a bust so far, but if he turns out to start to play better and is able to overcome his injuries, then that will start to not look as bad and at a huge waste as it has been so far with these first 2 seasons. But I think that Adam Peters is next in line to become the GM for the 49ers, assuming that the success train continues in the organization. I don't see any reason why it should stop unless like pieces start to go away. Obviously money's kind of tight right now. The next key component that the 49ers have on their list is of to-do list is obviously signing George Kittle. That's a big contract that we know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of agreeing to the numbers, because that's obviously something it's been the one main thing that's really held that contract back from going. We know what George Kittle wants. The market that he's technically in doesn't go that high. In fact, it's half of that. The next top player at the top position gets half of that money. So the 49ers are going to definitely break the ceiling on the current market value for a tight end. It's just a matter of what. I personally think it's between 15 and 17. I definitely don't think 20 is in the books. It might be in the books via incentives, but not initially, because that's wide receiver territory, and that's just not what George Kittle is. He's more tight end than he is wide receiver, although he is a big part of the passing game. We all know that. But I've said this multiple times. If you watch the tape, you even look at the stats that exist out there, his snap count is running and is blocking more than it is catching.
Well, and you know what? He is a tight end. There's no way around it. But obviously, and I agree with you, clearly what this does is set up the role for Adam Peters to move in to the GM position, and then for John Lynch to move up into a higher position with the 49ers.
And they're under contract. There's the likelihood that he, I think this is all theory, by the way. This is hypothetical speaking, but assuming that, teams are if the Niners start winning and go back to Super Bowl again, other teams are going to be looking to pick and pull from our pool of talent, on the player side and on the staff side. So that includes personnel, front office stuff. And they're likely, Adam Peters is going to get offers. I think one of the things here is they're saying, hey, this contract is because, we have hopes for you down the future to step up and come up the way you have been. This is it's almost like John's contract. I'm theorizing again. It's almost like John's contract, that 1 year subtraction, not matching Kyle Shanahan's length of time, is almost like a little wink and a nod to Adam Peters. Like, hey, not saying it's going to take 4 years, but this is designed in this way because there's also other people that we have in consideration, for the future of this franchise. And you're one of those components, and we'd like you to stay
100%. 110%, right? 110%. I'm excited. And of course, unfortunately, though, it seems to be in every GoldCast episode we have, it always comes back to the Kittle watch. Kittle contract watch 2020. We're sitting here. When's it going to happen? When are we going to get it? When can we as Niner fans be able to calm down and rest assured that this contract is in the books? We have no idea, and we'll see. But congratulations to John Lynch. Congratulations to the front office of the 49ers.
Right.
This is an awesome day. Way worth the celebration. And Lynch right here celebrating. How do I do this?
And
right?
we know,
right
we know that, we know that the season has been green lit. The Niners, no NFL team has really dealt with a whole lot of COVID issues. We know that Jeff Wilson Jr. was placed on the COVID list this week.
We had a couple guys in Jersey earlier, in early July or late June, somewhere in there.
Richie James Jr., he went on the list on Monday. So we have at least 2 players that are in that category right now. But we're still July, technically, the day of this recording. So August, and preseason is getting skipped this year. So by the time the season does start, assuming that they continue to test negative for COVID, they'll be back in the lineup. And to be clear, for those that may not know, the COVID, the reserve COVID list it doesn't necessarily mean that they are infected with COVID. They could have just been exposed to somebody, and as a precaution, they get put on the list. They have to, they have to take a back seat. So it could mean that too. There's no details given, and frankly, it doesn't matter. You just have to go through a couple weeks of quarantine protocol, and if the tests come back negative, then you're fine and you're good to go.
Exactly. I mean, to be all honest, to be completely transparent, as Raymond knows, I was actually exposed to COVID and had to go on self-quarantine for 14 days. Like that's
Right.
just what happens. And I came out negative. I'm all good. COVID can't kill me. Fingers crossed. But yeah. So last thing, Raymond, and then we're going to get out of here because we forgot to mention it. We said we would talk about it, but then we completely skipped over it. Our boys, social distance celebration. So the Giants at the very end.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the right as the extremity goes in, they all kind of go and they hover around and they jump. It's this hilarious video.
Yeah, they do air. He does air fives to the first base coach and the third base coach.
Yeah, all air fiving. What did you think of their socially distanced celebration? A bit more responsible. The A's had a full walk-off home run celebration. I don't remember. It's been the last couple games. I don't follow them super closely, but they were heavily criticized for their walk-off celebration. They were criticized for the fact that they jumped all over each other like they would normally do. The Giants, of course, being a San Francisco team, very conscientious of how these things work, did a socially distanced celebration. Were you in favor of what was a pretty silly looking but still awesome moment for the Giants?
I laughed. I thought it was funny looking. I thought it looked funny. It looked silly. I mean, because, I'm not a medical expert, but I'm like, if these guys are all getting tested and they're all negative, then what's the harm in the contact, because there is no, if nothing's there, then there's no risk of transmission. That's how I see it. And I'm willing to bet that this social distance celebration was put in place because of the criticism that the A's got for not doing that. I'd bet money on it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either way if they already had this in place, but would be less surprised or not surprised if it turns out that this was because of Oakland, and then staff came down and said, hey, we don't want to deal with any of that if a walk-off win comes into play here. So why don't we just have this in place now and just have the guys ready so that if it does happen, then, we can at least be, have the benefit of social distancing, even though there was an article that said like the Giants walk-off social distance was not so distance. I mean, there was a little bit of contact and nobody is 6 feet away, not by any stretch. They're just not touching each other. So, whatever. I guess
we got to take our wins somewhere, right? We got to.
I think if they're getting tested and they're not, I mean, think about it. Football's green lit. So football's green lit, and there's no escaping contact in that sport whatsoever. So
now you can tackle. You can tackle people for the entire game, but then you can't high five at the end or give swap jerseys. What?
Even though your blood and your sweat is still getting thrown all over the place against other players, although there is a face mask, but some guys don't wear gloves. All the jerseys are cut unless everyone's wearing sleeves and gloves. I don't know if that's in place. I do know that all the helmets have face masks this season. So unless they're sleeved and gloved, then it's like, okay, but you're high-fiving and all you're touching is like grass, and I don't know. It's a lot of it is very contradictory, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like a lot of the stuff that's in place here doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I know part of it is because we're in uncharted territory, but at the same time, common sense, man.
We're just grasping at straws on a lot of this stuff. But either way, I thought it was a hilarious celebration.
It was pretty funny too.
Yeah. Totally. So if you haven't seen it, go check out the Giants socially distanced walk-off home run celebration. It's great. That's right. Anyways, we are done. We just wanted to get a quick one in. Like I said, it's great to be back. Isn't it feel great, Ray? We're back. And
that's right. Basketball's back tonight on TNT.
Basketball is back tonight. Good luck to all the teams. I am not going to take this moment to troll The teams I want to troll, I'm going to show some restraint, which is very difficult for me right now.
Because
But
we are open source shit talking on the GoldCast.
yeah, but I am just excited that baseball's back. I'm excited that basketball's back. We got hoops coming back tonight. It's gonna be a huge night. Obviously, I live in Los Angeles, and we've got Lakers Clippers. It's gonna be a huge game, and go Clippers. So, all right. So let's wrap it up. And so concludes another edition of the Gold Cast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Sousa III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Salisa first, baby.
Boom. We'll see you next time. Same Goldcast time, same Goldcast channel. All right. So I'm going to stop recording.